Now, he is one of a rare breed, people who put themselves at risk to reveal corruption and to advance transparency and accountability. We know them as investigative journalists, and among their ranks here in Nigeria, Fisayo would have to be one of the most intrepid. Mr. Soyombo has gone undercover many times and is best known for spending several days in a police cell and in a prison in order to expose corruption in Nigeria's criminal justice system. He's also done hard-hitting investigations into bribery and fraud, the abandonment of soldiers injured in the battle against Boko Haram, the diversion of funds and the theft of food at IDP camps, and the brutal ethnic killings in Plateau State. And in the course of that work, he's taken on governments, security agencies, individuals and corporations, and it sometimes meant persecution and threats of imprisonment. So what motivates the investigative journalists to go undercover, often at great cost? We'll talk about that in a moment, but first, here's a short trailer clip of one of his recent investigations.
In December 2023, investigative journalist Fisayo received a mouth-watering job offer. It was from a company that produced gold, wristwatches, jewelries and necklaces. He would be paid $450 weekly, and he would be based in Bobo Dioulasso, Burkina Faso.
C'est quoi sa business? That dollar sweet.
It was his escape from poverty and hunger in Nigeria, and it was one several thousand Nigerians before him had taken. He accepted it. Therefore, on Monday, December 18th, 2023, he left Lagos in search of this lucrative job, spending 3 days on the road non-stop from Lagos to Benin Republic, Togo, and finally, Burkina Faso. Find out if he got the job, discover life in Burkina Faso, and see if he returned rich with a bag full of dollars as promised.
Outside, I'll go meet you outside.
Sounds brilliant, doesn't it? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now from our studios in Lagos by the founder and editor-in-chief of the Foundation for Investigative Journalism, Fisayo Soyombo, who's also a fellow at the Reuters Institute of Journalism at the University of Oxford. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. And I have to say, looking at that trailer, it just looks absolutely fascinating. Tell us a little bit about that particular investigation.
Thank you so much, Charles. Thanks for having me. It was basically an investigation I had to do to expose how Nigerians are suffering outside their country in Burkina Faso because of the hunger, starvation, the economic situation in the country. You find that it's so easy to lure Nigerians to just neighboring countries, Benin Republic, Togo, Niger, Mali, with the promise of lucrative jobs. The surprising thing is people fall for it. Like lots of Nigerians, when I got to Burkina Faso, I discovered that there were different lodges with scores of Nigerians. In some lodges would have a 2-bedroom flat, you had 50 people living in them, 80 people. I was fortunate to live in a 2-man room inhabited by 15 people. People who, borrowed funds, who sold property, who sold cars, who sold belongings, who took loans, who duped their friends and family to get into Burkina Faso, only to get in and get stuck, discovering that there was no gold company, there was no dollar-paying job, and then for most of them, they weren't people who were thriving in Nigeria. They were people who, who almost packed up their lives in Nigeria to get to Burkina Faso. So they became stuck, and then it's always that they don't want to come back to Nigeria. Even if they wanted to, they rarely have the means. So they are stuck, not able to go back and not able to travel forward. Some, the lucky ones, manage to make it back in Nigeria.
Well, that's an extraordinary story, and I'm glad you were able to tell it. But, I mean, what do you think drives people to do those kinds of things? I mean, is it greed or is it just the fact of unemployment?
I think greed is a factor just to a minute extent. The real issue is that people are desperate they're desperate for economic prosperity. You know, if they were in a country where there were jobs, where the government supported businesses, where it was easy to thrive, it would be harder to convince them, you know. But when people have nothing, it's so easy to sell hope to them. So I wouldn't blame, you know, I wouldn't blame it a lot on greed. I would say it's just the economic situation of the country. When people have nothing and you sell something to them, it's easy for them to fall for it.
And I mean, looking at that film and a host of others that you've done, I mean, do you feel that the work you do is helping to bring positive change to Nigeria?
In my earlier days in journalism, I was more idealistic. I used to talk about doing the kind of journalism that could change society. As the years went by, I started to realize that change was impossible. You can advance the society, so I would say my journalism helps to advance society, helps to slow down the wheels of injustice. Yes, because after this story was released, for instance, I had people come to my DM, people go on Twitter to comment and say, oh, my friend, my brother, my sister, you know, has this offer and, you know, is about to go on this journey. Thanks to you, they are not going to go on that journey again. So it's journalism, you know, that at the very least fits people with information with which they can make good decisions for themselves. So I would say, yes, to some extent, it does help advance society. Change is so hard to come by, almost impossible to come by, especially in a country as big as Nigeria. 2019, for instance, I went to, as you said earlier, spent 2 weeks, you know, lost my freedom for 2 weeks intentionally to go undercover in a police station and Ikoyi prison. But some of the things I uncovered are, you know, happening there already. But, you know, if while I was in Ikoyi prison, if one other journalist was in Kuje prison and another one was in Abeokuta prison, you know, perhaps we would have large-scale results. So it's tough to speak about change, but slowing down the rot, delaying the rot, you know, slowing down, obstructing injustice is significant in a country like Nigeria, and moving the country from one point to another, yeah, is not a bad result to have from a job you're passionate about.
Well, I mean, to be fair, you have a lot of very supportive advocates. I mean, especially internationally. I mean, you're a fellow of the Reuters Institute of Journalism Study at the University of Oxford. I mean, you've been recognized internationally and so on. But I wonder if you have the same level of supportive advocates within Nigeria, because you've run up against officialdom quite a bit, haven't you?
Yeah, you almost answered the question yourself. I think internationally there is enormous respect for this kind of journalism. You know, journalism that is brave, that goes the whole hog to expose the truth. But nationally, it's not so. You know, you said I have lots of advocates. I have lots of people. I have a few people on the other side. People I know. Wouldn't be seeing me on TV right now and be smiling. But then it comes with the territory. It's not something I bother too much about. The job is in the public interest. It's about just helping the public to have the right information. Ideally, you would say help the government, you know, because by now, if the government wanted to act, NITCOM, for instance, you know, I try to alert NITCOM towards NITCOM, Nigerian Diaspora Commission, to what's going on in Burkina Faso. There's been no response from them. I basically help them to do their job. But in government circles, I'm not seen as, you know, a friend of the government. The feedback I have is that I'm, in quote, an enemy of the government. But I don't hate government. I just want a better society. And it happens to be that the government is the most powerful in bringing change. So if you stick so much to uncover stories like this, and the government seems to be unbothered, you definitely won't view the government in good light. And I think as a result, they also don't fancy what I do. But it's not about government. It's not even about people appreciating it. It's knowing that a job has to be done. Somebody has to do it. And someone has found a reason to do it. And the person wants to do it without recourse to how the work is perceived, That's not something I worry myself with.
Well, indeed. I mean, people would wonder whether you actually enjoy what you're doing, whether you get some kind of kick out of going undercover and doing those things. But I know that for you, it is a struggle not only for public accountability, as you've just said, but also in some ways in a country like Nigeria for journalistic freedom against the forces of, if you like, overbearing government, as you suggested. I absolutely love my job. I would rather not do anything with my life right now. My original discipline is animal science. I made this conscious decision to become a journalist. So absolutely, I don't think there's anything better I could be doing with my job right now. Without passion, you don't go this far in. I mean, at the risk of immodesty, I would say that the staying power that I have is it can't be by happenstance. I was discussing with someone just a few minutes before this, and we were talking about my 2014 trip to Chibok. I was the first Nigerian print or online journalist to set foot on Chibok in 2014 after the abduction. You don't do stories like that over a 10, 15 year period, and you are not passionate about the job that you do. I think there's a second part to that question. I'm not sure I got it clearly. Right. Well, I was wondering whether for you, it is a struggle not only for public accountability, but also for journalistic freedom against the forces of overbearing government. But I think you kind of answered that question. So let me ask you another one, because obviously, I mean, sometimes there are repercussions for those that you expose in your investigations. Is there a part of you that sometimes thinks that maybe you didn't quite get it right? And that life isn't always black and white? Or do you always feel that the information you reveal absolutely needs to be made public?
It absolutely needs to be made public. There's never been a time I personally did an investigation and I thought I got it wrong, or I thought I got the process or the output wrong. However, it's a big struggle to do investigative journalism in a climate like Nigeria. You are constantly swimming against the tide. You're constantly swimming because you are exposing, rich, powerful, influential people who don't want stuff about them released in the press, and they go to they summon all kinds of powers, available to them. The judiciary, even the media itself, you find someone who has blatantly done wrong and has been exposed, and the person, still, institutes a lawsuit against you, and it's so clear, it's blatant. The evidence is there, the video is public, and they still sue you to court. You have people who reach out to Facebook, for instance, and say, we want you to truncate this guy's algorithm, its social media mileage, so that his stories can't go that far. You have people who threats. I've received veiled death threats. I've received strange phone calls. It's a lot, but what has to be done, just has to be done in the public interest.
Well, absolutely, and I think that there are a lot of people who see your determination to defend the principles of transparency and accountability as an inspiration. Inspiration not just to the generality of Nigerian people, but also to potential investigative journalists in this country. But We got a text message here. I got a text message earlier from someone who wondered whether you could investigate, for instance, the Electoral Commission, INEC. Is that something that you have considered or might consider, or something to do with the elections in this country? Or you wouldn't go and say it anyway on television?
I think if I answered that question on TV, the person should wonder if I'm truly an investigative journalist. Any answer I give you right now would actually be me just leading you into the wrong direction. But there's really no story that I can't at some point in time think of. And there have been some interesting investigations as well that maybe I did halfway, or I had in mind, and eventually didn't complete. Nigeria is such a huge country to cover, and there is a lot of work to be done. Electoral fraud is a matter of huge significance, and as a matter of fact, I do think that no serious presidential candidate in Nigeria should go to the polls without having a predetermined plan to expose electoral fraud. I don't even think it's a subject for an investigative journalist. In 2027 elections, any candidate who's talking about how to win elections, how to convince people, how to canvass votes, how to bring the youth, how to get people to register, to collect their PVCs, and is not including a plan, a predetermined plan to expose electoral fraud, and is waiting for the elections to hold and then come forward to say there was fraud here, there was manipulation here, the person is not ready to win to become the president of Nigeria, because it's clear. Political parties, the leading parties, when it was PDP, now that it's APC, some of their most high-profile leaders have gone on the record to admit that they did manipulate elections. So it's a serious conversation. I may or may not take it up, but I think anyone who wants to be president should have a plan, just the way you sit down and draw up a manifesto.
Well, Fisayo, I want to thank you very much indeed for taking the time to come and talk to us. I know you were very reluctant to do it, and I had to really kind of, try and plead with you that it would be of great benefit. So you're not like somebody who wants to hug the limelight. You're much more focused on the work that you do. But I want to thank you very much indeed for obliging us and coming to the studio. Prosperity-Soyombo is the founder and editor-in-chief of the Foundation for Investigative Journalism. He's also a fellow at the Reuters Institute of Journalism Study at the University of Oxford. Thank you very much indeed. And he was talking to me from our studios in Lagos.